Did you know that Google personalizes many searches by city and Also Asked is the only tool to access live People Also Asked data at city level? Try for free at alsoasked.com.
I was going to say that SEO with Fat Joe is as peaceful as this, but then the birds are all having fights.
Tired of SEO guesswork? Quadra's AI agent goes deeper to uncover high-impact optimizations and completes hours of SEO in minutes. Get started now.
Hi everyone. So I guess we already gone through this. Yes, I was made in Italy, but I live in Sydney, Australia, and I got more than 20 years experience in media buying. So we got that out of the way, so you don't have to wonder about my accent for the next 20 minutes. But let's kick off with a quick question. How many of you know how many combinations are possible within an RSA in Google? So please raise your hand if you think there is about 5,000 combinations. What about around 15,000? What about 30,000? Okay, cool. We'll get back to that in a minute. But today, I'm really hoping that I can show you a little bit of a glimpse of future, and especially what media buying, in my view, is going to look like in the near future. Cool. You've probably seen a lot of talks about AI, but it's fair to say that AI has really disrupted our industry. I guess pretty much all of us are familiar with AI tools. We probably use the likes of ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude to do lots of tasks that relate to PPC, like keyword research, ad copy creation, market research, and so on and so forth. But really where the game is changing is within agentic AI. That is really what is changing the game. But before we look at the future, we need to go and think about what today looks like and where that is coming from. So it's true to say that we've seen a significant shift in the last years. And the platforms have really moved away from targeting in a way that was very precise. We were very much in control of the targeting. And that was based on things like keywords, match types, to something that is much more about the user, is about user intent. And that is a radical change. It's really changing things quite a lot for us. And we are really becoming familiar with the fact that targeting is not being in control anymore the way we used to be, but targeting is becoming broader. And that broader targeting is becoming the new normal. Think about it. In terms of Google, we often actually nowadays see quite good success for people running campaigns using broad match targeting and smart bidding. And if you told me that a few years ago, I would say, no way. Broad match and smart bidding together, really bad idea. In terms of meta, we see Advantage Plus and broader targeting where actually the platform is choosing the targeting for us, replacing interest and behavioral stack targeting. And in this context, you have the likes of Meta saying that creative is the new targeting. So it's not really where you choose to target, but it's actually the creative that is making the difference. It's the creative that is going to be the differentiator. And that's because essentially the platforms have evolved so much and they're so much more powerful nowadays that can really pair the right content to the right person to the right time. And I know you've heard this for a long time now, but it's really where things are at now. It's not about us being dictating the targeting, but it's the system actually finding the right people for you. But let's stop for a second and let me tell you a little story, how creativity then plays a part, and combined with that can really help us to take it to the next level. This is the Post-it story. In 1968, a scientist at 3M called Dr. Silver was experimenting and trying to create a high bonding adhesive. But instead, he was able to create a adhesive that was very low tack and basically that was deemed as a failed experiment. What happened is that nothing really happened until 1974, when another scientist called Dr. Fry was able to actually apply creativity and really use problem solving to actually fix one of his personal challenges. Dr. Fry was a singer in a choir and used to have a problem where he needed to put some pieces of paper on his hymns book to be able to keep tabs on his book. But the problem is those used to fall. So he was able to actually then combine the fact that there was this opportunity to use this low-tack adhesive to actually use it to his advantage and obviously keep tabs on his book. What happened next is that the two guys started using these pieces of paper with low-tack to actually communicate. And that was the way the Post-it started. What that goes to show us is that the data was always there, but what was new, it was not the adhesive. What was new was the idea of applying creativity for problem solving and actually being able to create something that was actually innovative. It's fair to say that data has been, for a long time, has been the cornerstone of performance marketing. That, I think, we cannot argue about it. That's a fact. But the problem is that data without context is just noise. And what we see with that is that we actually see a growing trend of risk adversity because marketing is becoming dictated by data. And that is often because it is dictated by ROI. How many times you might have seen or heard founders or startups saying, well, we have unlimited budget, we have millions to spend, and in the small print you got provided with 10x ROI. And the problem with that is that way too often this performance-first approach is really killing creativity. But answer to the question, there are more than 32,000 possible combinations with an RSA that is going to show 3 headlines and 2 descriptions. And if you think about it, that's a huge amount of data. In fact, to be able to actually test every single combination, what you're going to do is you're going to need 32,000 impressions, which is huge. And the problem with that is that not always high impressions will equal to high impact. And this is where creativity needs to come into play. Because without creativity, what we see is that way too often the creative suck. It's pretty bad. I guess in Australia we're quite blessed. We got really good SEO agencies, and you can see we got multiple #1 agencies. So we're quite good at it. So if you need SEO, come to Australia. But likewise, you can also see other examples of very bad creative. And the problem that we see is that data and relying on systems and machine learning without really putting an input from a creative standpoint is leading to really bad creative. Creative and creativity are becoming an afterthought. In this case, I would argue that this is probably not, in my opinion, a very good ad, where it's actually repeating 3 times the same thing. And what might happen is that it actually might end up tainting the credibility of the advertiser. I guess we are all quite familiar with the auto-created assets. Another example of how that can really suck. And we all probably seen horror stories of video created within Performance Max. So this is what I'm saying is that if you rely on the system without understanding the system, how the system works, is a really bad recipe for disaster. And the problem is that sometimes we rely on that because we think we are sticking to best practices, but the problem is that best practices are not always what is best for us. And you're actually better off breaking the rules. What the problem is with that is also that we are tending to become really average at best. Without putting more effort, average is really becoming the norm. And that is a really big problem. So what you need to think about is that you need to think about combining data and creativity. because they're not opposing forces. They're not against each other. It's about making them work in a complementary way. Because ultimately, the quality of your creative always comes from data insights. Data is really critical to inform the strategy, the creative strategy. And also, what you need to recognize is the fact that while data is your strategy, it's really creativity that fuels the connection. And without that, you're just creating ads that are not gonna engage, they're not gonna cut through. Ultimately, because marketing is still based on all principles that rely on psychology and creating emotional connections with your consumers. Because ultimately, what we know is that people buy based on emotions. In fact, we know this, and with this, we've been talking about this for the last 70 years, since when the shift has been moving away from product-based features in the ads to actually underlying emotions. And if you think about some examples, I guess this is a good example where a good ad is about highlighting emotional benefits as opposed to bring up technical details. In this case, the tagline says all. It's all about motivation. It's about connecting with people. But in an AI world, what we also need to think about is that to meet the demand that AI requires, we really need to think about creative volume and creative diversity. Think about it. It's about testing, it's about personalization, and it's about how all that data can really be used to feed into the system, to let the algorithm understand that using the broader targeting, it can learn from its own insights and refine that strategy. Apologies for the shittiest Venn diagram you've probably ever seen, but yeah, design is not my thing, I guess. But this is also going to help us to tackle one of the biggest questions that we often get when we run performance campaigns. How do I scale and grow? And that is really one of the biggest challenges we might face. And it's really about moving away from precise targeting. It's about letting the control go a little bit, loosen up a little bit. So it's about moving outside our core target audiences, because what is really the target audience, in fact? In this case, for example, I'm showing you on the left-hand side the same product that you got on the right-hand side, but might appeal to different audiences. The one on the left, the product is less than $60, so it's pretty cheap. I don't know what that would be in pounds, probably 30 pounds, something like that. So it can appeal an audience that is motivated by value, a value-driven audience. But the same product will also be likely to appeal an audience that is motivated, moved by sustainability because of its eco-friendly materials. So what we need to do is really step outside our traditional targeting criteria and be comfortable with the fact that the system can do a lot of the work for us. What we need to focus is on our target audience and really focus on profiling that audience, because being able to do that allows us to increase the relevancy and allow us also to align the message, align the creative to that specific audience and those things that motivate them. Even if for the same person, if you think about it, it's about data plus creativity that can help us to shape personalization. Because if you think about the same user being in different stages of the user journey, you will want to speak to them in different ways. But what we see too often is that we actually have the same message no matter what. To summarize that, what I think is really going to be important in 2025 and beyond is about working on ad formats. Think about the fact that obviously video is so much more important nowadays, and creative volume for the reasons we just discussed, testing, personalization, and so forth. But also because you want to really tailor that creative to diverse audiences. Because it's not just about being effective, but it's about engaging with your target audience. So just a few takeaways, actionable takeaways that I hope that are going to be useful. Think about the creative volume and diversity is not a nice to have anymore. It's really table stakes. You also need to think about embracing a test and learn mindset. I know, this gets said so many times, but it's so much true when we think about the amount of data that we got available and what we can actually do with it. And finally, all this doesn't even require a huge team. It doesn't really need a lot of resources, and it doesn't need a complete change of your creative strategy. Think about, a couple of bonus points, simple things that you can already do today, like, having a strong naming convention that you can use to turn data that relates to your creative into meaningful insights that can inform and refine your strategy. Or, for example, using customer reviews. We often focus so much on the way we perceive our brand, and we want to communicate our brand to our customers, the way we want to communicate the brand values. But often, actually, you will find out there might be that your customers see your brand in a different way. And that might actually give you an advantage, because this might help you to actually use some of the ways that your audience is seeing your brand in a way that can help you to stand out instead of saying the same thing that everyone else is saying. So, from a media buyer perspective, what is radically changed is that instead of pulling every lever under the sun to try to hit your target audience and be so specific and so narrow, you really need to give up a little bit of that control. It's not about, doing SCAGs anymore. It's not about being in control of the machine, but it's understanding how the machine works. Because if you understand how the machine works, you can actually make the most of it. And really becoming, as a media buyer, becoming a strategic thinker, where you can combine data without necessarily being a data analyst with creative acumen. So make sure that the creative is not just an afterthought. Because data plus creativity is really what I think is our future. And the future really belongs to the robots and the brains. I mean, I guess, the AI and machine learning, all we got already nowadays, is not going to go away. You have to embrace it. But we are the brains. We still are the ones that can actually drive the machine and help it. However, the future might look very different very soon. And this is an example of what we can actually do and we can already build nowadays, where we can create AI agents that can actually take care of the media buying from end to end. This is a little bit scary, but ultimately it's something that we can already do, where the difference from AI tools where you get an input and you get an output, so you ask a question to ChatGPT, you get an answer. Here, an AI agent is autonomous. It can act independently. So in this case, imagine this scenario where you have a client brief saying, hey, we want to advertise this new product, this is the landing page, where an agent can take care of the brief, understand the brief, and then acknowledge receipt of the brief, and then start working with other agents using his own brain, his own memory, and tools. And this is where you can unlock a lot of opportunities, because using those tools, you can create and use other agents that will be in charge of doing the keyword research, ad copy, competitor research, market research, and so on and so forth, and coordinate everything to the point that then using APIs, we can do this already today, you can actually have an end-to-end campaign creation without you having to do anything at all. The output of that will be a campaign draft, if you like, or you could push it live, but let's say we got a campaign draft where someone can get into the loop, like a brain, review that, and push it live. I know it sounds a little bit, far away from what you might be doing today, but that's something that we do already today. So I think that is really where I think the future is heading. And that's the reason why I think we need to embrace this, and we need to really think about what is our role and how that data and creativity plays a part in what we're going to do next. That's all. Thank you very much. If you want to connect with me,